Hi everyone, welcome again. This is now part 2 of 3D modeling this character, and we're going to begin on the foot. So basically what we have here is we have our two orthographics laid out, and now we're going to use what's called a box modeling technique. We're going to use a simple box. We're going to build out an entire character shape from that box. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the basic box. Create a box here. I'm going to start down here in the foot, and I'm going to create a box. Just a simple box like this. If I go to the length, width, and height segments, they're all 1, 1, 1. And that's as basic as they need to be. So what we're going to do is use the extrusion technique, and we're just going to extrude this box. So we're going to move it here so it matches with the both feet locations right here. And we're going to extrude this box to make the foot shape. So I'm just going to scale it really quick, just a little bit of scale, so it matches the front here. And now we're going to notice that it's overlapping our orthographics, right? We can't see the image behind it. Well, what we can do for that is we can hold Alt and X on the keyboard, and we can now see a transparent box that we can work with. If I push F4 on my keyboard, you can also see the wireframes if your box has a nice wireframe for you to look at. I might make it black, like that. Simple enough. So now I'm going to convert this box to an edit poly. Right click on the box, convert to editable poly right here. And I'm going to go to vertex mode, and I'm going to adjust my vertexes for the toes so that they line up. So I'm going to have my toes here, I'm going to have my toes here, toes there, like that. So we have our chunk of toes. Now this is a chunk of toes right now, and then we're going to eventually maybe cut them up and have individual toes. But for right now, we're probably going to cover this character with a boot. I'm going to ask you guys at the end of the second week assignment, the second week of organics, we're going to put clothing on this character, so we're not too concerned with the toes. So right now we have this little chunk of toes. Now we need to make the rest of the foot. So what's the easiest way to make the rest of the foot? Well, it's just polygon extrude. We're going to keep everything really box-like at first, and then we're going to smooth things out afterwards. So I want to extrude it once, twice, 3 times, and 4 times. So you should have extruded it 4 times. And now we have enough. It's still simple enough to work with, but we have enough vertexes to create the basic shape of what we're looking for. So be sure to go back to vertex mode. So I'm always been in vertex mode now, and I'm going to just adjust these vertices, how I see fit to get the shape that I want. So you see, just like simple manipulation. And now if I push Alt X, we can see the basic silhouette is coming together of this foot. And if you want to give it a skin tone or something like that, just so that you can simulate it, please do. And we have the basic shape of our foot right there. So we're going to actually build up a little bit from this, and we're going to build up the bottom part of the leg. We're not going to just like skip out on that. We'll make this the foot and leg tutorial, at least the calf. So we have that part. So easy enough, right? With the calf, we have a nice little polygon here to work with, and I'm just going to extrude up the calf. Maybe 1 time. We need to build the little part here, so maybe 2 here. 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, and 5. And what we're going to do with this is we're just going to build up the leg with it. We're just going to build up to, let's say, the mid-calf here, about there. And I'm going to grab these. We're just building out the basic shapes here. I'm just making sure that any curve that I see is getting covered by this. And that. There you go. So now if I push Alt W, I'm just going to zoom into my perspective a little bit, and I push Alt X. We got the start to a really low poly calf. I'm going to push Shift Q for a quick render. Yeah, so it's coming together all right. So obviously now we need to bulk this in a bit, right? Because this is just a box shape. You can see from our top view and our front view that everything is kind of just crazy. So what I need to do is start adding a little bit more detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to polygon mode, and I'm going to go to edit, Swift loop, and I'm going to add one loop around the middle of the foot, right here. So the reason why we add that loop is so that we can actually put more detail into our mesh as we go. And then we're going to do the same thing. And it's also good when we turbo smooth it, it'll actually smooth all around our model. So if I go to edit Swift loop, I'm going to do the same for around here. And now you can see, if we start playing around with the actual shape, we can add a mesh smooth modifier. And we get the basic shape of our foot. And now we can play around with the shape of our foot to match up better with our actual drawing here. So I'm just going to take this, rotate it a bit. And I'm going to make sure, while playing with vertexes, that all my front view lines up with everything else. Now I'm going to use a little bit of soft selection here. I go to soft selection, use soft selection, and I'm going to change my fall off number so that I can change how many vertices it's pulling with it. And I can start changing the actual shape, and it's bending. See how it's bending from the front view there? And we can get a nice look to our mesh. So we're able to change the basic shape of how everything looks, and we can do some alterations to it. So what we have to do is we're going to go around our mesh, and we're just going to squeeze in a couple of points of our mesh. So in the front part, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off soft selection for a second. So here's a good point about how to work with objects like this as well. So a lot of the times when you have to scale something, see how we're scaling this and it's kind of awkwardly twisting? That's because it's scaling in what's called the viewport. It's going by how our viewport looks at an object through X, Y, and Z. But you can change the mode at which you scale, move, and rotate by clicking here. This is called your reference coordinate system. So it's referencing our viewport right now, but we can actually change it so that it's referencing local. And what that means is it's going by all the local vertices and how they're organized. And you can see the squishing of these vertices is much better. Now, it still needs some adjusting, of course, but it'll probably round itself off better in our turbo smooth as we add it. See, that's like a little bit better already. A little bit smoother in the front. So we have to do the same thing with the back. So we can grab these two, and you can scale them. I mean, you can scale it still in the viewport if you really want to, or you can just move them individually yourself. Most of the times, I would just take my own control and start adjusting these. But basically, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to adjust these vertices now to match our reference a lot better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, Alt X. I see that the bottom of my foot needs to match slightly better. Start squishing this down. Go through your different viewports and just make sure that the low polygon model actually fits your reference in all the views. Now, we were focusing on one view while we were developing the low poly base mesh, but be sure that it looks good in all the views. So right now I'm just going around. I'm just scaling and squishing vertexes until they start matching the actual shape. See here that everything's kind of matching okay. So I bring these in here, like that. And if I hold Alt X, I can see from my side view here that this might need some alteration in the back. It might be poking a little too far back. Don't forget to scale this in slightly. And basically what you want to do is try and simulate, you can look at your actual foot or look at reference images of feet as well and do some adjustment. If your foot is more cartoony, if you're working on a different character, then by all means, adjust it to fit that other character better. You can switch between polygon and vertex mode, of course. So don't be afraid to experiment. Our model will be close. It's not going to be spot on with this reference because, maybe you want bigger toes, right? My character might need bigger toes. Like that. Now this character already has long feet, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. Once we build out the whole character, that's when we can do a lot of our edits. Because really, like, I might scale down the feet like this. And if you find that this black is distracting here, remember that we can change our render settings by going to our rendering menu. We can change the environment by pushing 8 on the keyboard or clicking environment and changing the background color. So I'm just going to change it to a gray. And we can also unfreeze these image planes in the background right now. Right click object properties and make them non-renderable by clicking renderable here. And then I'll freeze them again. So that way I can just see my foot, with the basic lighting right there. That doesn't look too bad actually. I like the scale that I picked for that. There is some squishing that's going on here, so I might need to thicken out the ankle here. So I might just grab this, just push this more forward, and then push this one more back. And I'll pretty much do the same going down the line. I'll push these a little bit more forward. Those ones more backwards. This one's more forwards. So it creates a nice thickness to the leg. And I'll do some slight adjustments here. And some more slight adjustments. So 3D is all about doing a lot of adjustments as well, right? Don't forget that this is going to take a lot of work. It's not going to be 5 seconds and it's going to get it done. We're going to build up our entire model first, do a whole bunch of tweaking right afterwards, and we're going to continue on as we see fit there. So basically you want to continue this pattern and continue bringing this leg up across the model. So basically with our leg cut already, we have the front and side segments there. Basically we want to create another loop around the model just to give it a final touch there. I'm going to create a loop down the front of the model here, going down the front of the foot. So before we extrude anything else, I'm going to create another loop here. And you can see that one loop makes everything look actually a little bit better already, so that's great. And then now we're going to extrude the rest of the leg. So you can do some more adjustments if you'd like on this type of shape here. The mesh smooth should handle most of it, but if you want to do some slight adjustments here, an ankle is a little thicker in the back. Maybe I'm going to grab these vertexes, pull them back here. Keep in mind, you should always be playing with the low poly and then just taking a look at what the high poly looks like and just keep going back and forth with it, right? Back and forth. So if you find that, this is my left view here, I'm going to go to my right view. I'm going to hide my reference here for a second. I'm going to make sure that everything in this viewport looks good too. So I'm going to go around here, do my adjustments. My low poly actually looks pretty good now. I can go to polygon, highlight all these polygons, make sure they're part of the same smoothing group. So I'm going to go clear all, and then I'm going to put these all in smoothing group 1. And you can see that's my low poly. And if I turn on my high poly, that's the high poly model right now. And it's not looking too bad. We're getting the base part done of the foot, a very cartoony looking foot. And this is only with boxes, right? We just had a few slice planes, played around with the vertexes, and we managed to get an ankle and a foot done. Now we're not, like I said, later on we're going to touch upon toes, but right now I just want to build the basic shape of the character. Always focus on thick details of your character first to make sure your entire character looks good, and then start adding the minor details in. The really finicky details. Because if you start worrying about the small stuff right away, like, oh, I gotta get those toes, and oh, the toenails, I gotta get toenails in. If you worry about that right now, what you're going to get is a model that will never be completed because you're always focusing on the minor work that needs to be done. You need to focus on the major picture of it first and get a silhouette done of your character, like a full body done. As small detail as possible is needed to make sure you get what the character looks like, and then you can add in the minor detail. Because for instance, if I were to say model a foot, okay, now model a character that has their foot cut off. then what was the point of modeling that foot and all that detail with all the toes and the toenails and stuff like that? There's no point at all. So this is why we build up a base character, so that we have a character we can just build up an actual fully detailed character with afterwards. And then we don't have to panic like, oh, well, yeah, we did all that work on this part and that part for no reason. This is why we build a base mesh and we don't worry about too much detail at first. We add the detail in later. So we're going to keep building up this leg. We're going to do about, let's say, 5 or 6 more extrusions. So basically, I'm going to go back to my low poly. I'm going to make my references visible again. I'm going to adjust my vertexes a little bit here. Something like this. I'll make sure that this little vertex in the middle is like almost directly in the middle. And I'll grab all these polygons at the top. And I'm going to extrude upwards. Extrude, extrude, extrude. There it is. So I'm going to do some more extrusions. And I'm going to add about 3 or 4 extrusions around the kneecap, because that's where our character is going to need to bend if it's animated, right? So I'm going to build up, one big extrusion here. And I'm just going to move and scale that extrusion right away. First thing I'm going to do, move and scale the extrusion. And I'm going to go to my left view here as well and make sure that that looks good here as well right away. So I'm just going to scale it and move it. You'll see that way we're already like snapping into the process of like, okay, it's getting done. It's already moving and we're already scaling, all that kind of stuff. So then I go back to extrude. I grab these polygons up here and I'm going to extrude it, 3 times to the knee. So 1, I'm going to move, rotate, and scale to make sure this is on point. And then 2, go up again. 2 here. And remember to work in both views, so we get something decent looking. So right now I'm going to adjust these. Going to do a little rotation here. Rotation here too. Going to rotate these to squeeze in a bit better. There you go. Something like that. 1, 2, and then we have number 3. Remember that 3D modeling is a constant adjustment thing. You can see as I'm going, I'm actually adjusting this model over and over again. That's because I'm seeing some things that maybe I want to adjust. Remember, I can rotate on different viewports too. Like right now, you can see my my gizmo is looking like just basically a crosshair. That's because it's going by the view. So right now it's straight front view, so it knows X, Y, and Z. But we can change that to go to local. So that means what I have selected becomes the new gizmo shape. And you can see now it's changing with what I'm doing. So you can always change that type by going back to this little gray box here and changing it to view or local. And then that helps you out for just adjusting your vertexes. So let me just go here. I'll adjust that there. Let me put F4 on. And so what I'm doing now is I'm pinching these vertexes in the back of the knee. So what happens is when the character bends the knee, there's a lot more detail in the front and the back of this knee for the character to bend with. So right now we have a knee that can be well animated. So I'm going to extrude just a couple more times, maybe 2 or 3 times, to form the rest of the leg, going pretty high up on the leg. We'll say about here. So basically, this detail here is not really necessary. It's just like a nice, just the thigh, right? So it's not too much detail. It'll create the shape just with a couple of extrusions. So I'm just going to go once. I'm going to scale it out. Make sure it looks good in both views. Scale it out here. 1. And then we have 2. And then I'll extrude again. 2. Move these vertexes in spots so it looks okay. And then finally, we have 3. And that will end, let's say, about here. Because we're going to have to work on the pelvis in the next video. Because the pelvis is going to be a lot more complicated than this. But first, I want to make sure that you all have nice, proper legs that look good. It's like working out. Today's leg day. So just make sure that your foot and leg look okay, that you have time to produce that kind of detail. Make sure it fits the reference. And remember that you don't need to be working on the same reference I am. I'm working on this this model here. But if you prefer to work on something different, then by all means, as long as you feel comfortable, you can grab a reference, an orthographic reference from something else, and work on that as well. So if you feel like you want to work on something else organic, please, then please do so. So I'm just building up the leg. I'm making sure it looks good in all the views here. I'm making sure that it's all adjusted. I go to my polygon, and I'm going to make sure that everything's a part of the same smoothing group by going down the list to polygon smoothing groups. I'm going to go clear all. I'm going to go and make them all part of one smoothing group. It is organic, so they should all be part of one smoothing group. I'm looking at my low poly, and then I'm going to change my render settings here so I can see a little bit better render setup. And remember that we did this for basic rendering. If I go to render setup, I'm going to change my output size here to HDTV and just click 1920 by 1080 or whatever resolution works for you, maybe 1280 by 720. And I'm going to take a look at my leg, and then I'm going to take a look at my leg with Mesh Smooth on. And it's looking pretty good so far. Of course, feel free to exaggerate detail. If you find that your leg maybe needs to look thicker in one view, then just make it thicker. So if I wanted a more cartoony look, or I just want to inflate this a little bit, I'm going to inflate. And remember that Mesh Smooth also makes things thinner. So this is we're going to be using Mesh Smooth to make our final model look good. Because even with the Mesh Smooth on right now, 672 polygons, that's absolutely nothing. Keeping Mesh Smooth at like one iteration makes our model smooth and adds little to no polygons. It makes it really simple for us to work with. And just changing some simple things will make this model look good in most of the views. And remember that, like I said, Mesh Smooth makes things thinner. So if you just want to add some thickness to it, make sure to use the scale tool and thicken things up as you see fit. And remember that this is a process that we will be going through constantly. If I add my foot here, kind of like my foot a little thinner. Yeah, if you want to change the style of your foot, be a little thicker this wise, feel free to do some slight adjustments. Yeah, I like that foot a lot better. And also, don't forget that you should be going around adjusting your model so that the leg looks like a leg. So if we go to our top view here, maybe we can pop out these vertexes on the side a bit to make it more soft, more roundish. And the easiest way to do that is I grab an edge like this. So I'm going to turn off this high resolution cage. I grab one edge here, just that single edge right there. And I'm going to go to loop. And what it does is it grabs the entire loop that goes around the 3D model. This is why we create edge loops. You'll notice that my entire model flows, right? Water flows. You can see these polygons. Any polygon I would grab here would flow one way or the other, and that's exactly what we need to. Even when we go down and grab polygons that go here, watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll hold Alt W so you see a better view. I'm going down here, water flows. If I go across here, water flows. If I go over here, water flows. If I go down here, water flows. They should never end up in a rat's nest, which a rat's nest is when a whole bunch of vertexes come together. I think it's like 4 or more polygons together with one merged vertex. That creates a rat's nest, and a rat's nest is not something you want. You want polygons to constantly flow. And as we approach more complicated parts of the body, like the pelvis, you're going to start understanding that flow a lot better. But for right now, I just wanted you to focus on the leg, so this, and make sure it has a nice thickness to it. Because like certain things like this, where I see my edge is kind of like more towards the backside, maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want this nice nice puffy calf or something like that. So that needs to mean more adjusting. This should puff out further than the front of the leg does. So I'm going to go and grab this loop here, and I'm actually going to scale it out a bit. Maybe I should scale more local. Do a slight rotation. Do some scale. And then adjust as you see fit, right? Some of the vertexes down here, I didn't want to really move too much. So I'm actually going to move these back in place. So I'm going to grab this, that, and I'm just going to adjust this one step at a time. You can see even for me, I'm doing a lot of fine tweaking, right? I'm kind of adjusting as I'm going. And that's pretty much what it comes down to, especially when we get to this phase of 3D modeling. The more I teach you, the more I'm even going to have to start adjusting my own models, going by view. Here, I'll rotate. I just want to make sure the sides of my leg are more puffed out than the back of my leg to give it that like cartoony, exaggerated look. But if you're going for more realistic, obviously follow your reference guide, follow your image as close as possible. Um, yeah, so don't forget to go, excuse me, don't forget to go in wireframe mode as well. You can see the back edges here. I know what they are, so I'm grabbing them, I'm tweaking them, adjusting them, and now my leg looks a little bit better. So now when I go to mesh smooth, look at the difference. That slight extra work that I put into it really made the calf look a lot better from the front angle, and it looks pretty good from the back angle. And it looks a little thin here, so I might thicken this out a little bit. But I think so far that looks like 100 times better than it did a second ago. So it's just a matter of me actually tweaking around and playing with the actual size. Now you don't have to worry about the structure of the leg itself. Right now these legs are spread apart, so it kind of looks like an A shape. So even if it looks a little bit awkward right now, these will be adjusted to match. The one thing I would recommend is that as you're going along, because these legs are at a slight angle, your vertexes here should be at a slight angle as well. So I'm just going to angle these all out just a little bit, because this is reflecting sorry, excuse me, I'm all coffee today. This is reflecting the angle that the leg is currently at. So because I'm reflecting this angle, if we rotate the legs to be straight down, this will all flow really nicely together and look proper from any angle I throw it at. See, so now everything's kind of flowing downwards. You can see it's flowing down the leg, flowing down the leg. So if the leg was completely stiff and straight, what you get is a nice flow down the leg straight down, and the foot would obviously be a little bit animated, so we'd adjust the foot to be something like this, right? And that looks like a proper leg in low poly. So, so just a slight rotation at the end. Make sure everything flows here. Remember, if you want something to look smooth in the front, you just got to push these vertexes forward slightly here. So I might do this as my next step. These edges here I'll bring back. So what I might do is, instead of grabbing the entire ring, I'm just going to grab the back ones for now. Maybe about to there. I'm going to pull this back out slightly. Just slightly. And I'm going to go to my front loop here. And maybe up to here as well. I'm just going to push these out slightly. So now if I create a mesh smooth, you can see, like, even in low poly, this mesh it's looking better and better every time. If I add an ambient occlusion light, so I go to skylight here, where we added it for our scenes, I add this skylight, go to your lighting menu, go to standard lights, go to skylight, and go cast shadows. It's going to take a second to render, so just please hold. But yeah, you get a decent leg. You can even see some of the little issues we're having here. Some edges are a little too refined, and that's fine, because that just means that a slight adjustment's needed. But you can see, like, look at that. Look how smooth that leg looks. It looks great now. Just with that slight adjustment, pulling vertices, playing around with the edges, it looks a lot better. Now, there is some pinching I have on the ankle here, but we can just adjust that ourselves in the back and just play around with the vertexes. And, for here, maybe I'll just pop this in a little closer here. This one, same thing. I'll pop this in here. I'll make sure these vertices in the back kind of lined up more correctly. And boom, mesh smooth. That looks a lot better already. So that's our leg. We have a leg and a foot. And if you're so inclined and you really want to see what it looks like constantly as you develop one leg, you want to mirror it to the other leg, just go Tools, go to Mirror, and Reference. Tools, Mirror on the X-axis, so you see the leg here, and Reference. If it's on a different axis, don't worry, just click on one of the different axes and make it a reference. And then move it over like that. And now you can see what your leg looks like on both sides of the leg right now. So as you develop the rest of the body, you can see we can build up that body as we go on and on, step by step. So, and you can always adjust and scale both these down if you want to scale slightly. My character might be a little shorter based upon like the scaling I'm doing right here. So I have something like that I like. So this is building really basic legs to start off with. And then next tutorial, See, this is already half an hour, right? I'm trying to teach you things about edge flow and being consistent, being good with your details, making sure your object looks like your actual object that you're going for. So today, what I'd like you to do is set up the orthographics, set up your legs, and then we're going to push on and we're going to do the pelvis and the torso, which is going to be a lot more complicated. So just make sure 400% that your legs look really, really good. Your feet look good. Don't worry about toes, because toes, we're going to cover these feet up eventually. We're just making a base body to work with. In fact, if you're so inclined to learn ZBrush or high polygon modeling with painting on polys, then this is perfect base for you to work with. So you want to make this even more accurate. So let's try and make sure those legs look good, those feet look good. Go around your model several times. Like I said, if you're working from your own reference, great. If not, these references will be provided for you. And please get your entire legs and feet done. And in the next video, we're going to go over your pelvis. Thank you.